tarot cards are often the first step and basis for a seeker of metaphysical knowledge, like you, to discover your forever path. That could be astrology, numerology, healing arts, or any other spiritual interest you discover along the way. Elaine Ireland is not only a teacher of tarot, she is a mentor who supports you and will be there for you. Visit www.ElaineIrelandTarotMaster.com now and discover how Elaine's mentoring, tarot card and psychic readings, tarot card classes, and more help you to grow into the true being you are meant to be. Welcome to Conversations with the Ancients, where you're about to discover a whole different world than the one that, up until now, you've believed you're familiar with. World-Renowned Metaphysicist, practicing psychic and tarot teacher Elaine Ireland invites you on a journey where you'll hear voices from the past, interviews with some of the greatest metaphysicians you've never heard of, because in their time, they needed to move with stealth. You'll also meet today's spirit mediums, healers, and others who will show you a side of the paranormal you've never seen before. Be sure you visit our website at conversationswiththeancients.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, hear the words of metaphysicians who blazed the trail. You're not in jail, thanks to them.
Welcome, folks. This is Elaine Ireland, talking with another ancient today that I'm very, very proud and honored to be speaking with. This is Linda. We go way back to the old Central Texas Parapsychology Association days, CTPA, here in Austin, although that was really a branch of an international psychic organization out of England, out of the Witch's Tower. In fact, it's that old. Psychics used to send in their handwritten or later typed written predictions, dreams, that sort of thing, and they would keep them listed in the tower in a tiny little office, I understand, according to Colonel Jackson, who started the one here in Austin. And for years, that was a way of verifying what came true and what didn't, or sometimes more than one psychic would have the same thing. They kept up with that sort of thing. Now, remember, that was long before telephones as such. First, they caught up with that, and any kind of computerized system at all. So it was very hands-on for those people that were taking care of it. That's where CTPA came from. When Colonel Jackson was stationed in England, he got involved with it, and he just applied for it when he got home, I think, after he got back to the States, and founded us, CTPA. So that's where I met Linda. She was active in that area. We'll talk about that later. And then we sponsored psychic fairs, and so she was a participant as a reader as well. But say hello, Linda.
Hi. And thank you for having me, Elaine. I'm deeply honored.
You know, it's interesting. Thank you. Linda and I have not seen each other for a very long time, and it come to find out we share the same beautician. Come on. When I saw her walk in the door with one of her friends, I went, I know her. And that was an appointment that had to be reset. And I really think had to be reset because you and I needed to connect again.
Exactly.
No, there are no accidents. So we had a good time catching up what little bit we could that day. I had to leave. He took care of my simple cut, and then I left. So, but at least we exchanged phone numbers and kept in touch. And here we are again. Linda, I don't know where to start. She sent me a long list. So we'll go down this because I think all of it is important about your background, paranormal abilities running your family, more aware stories and occurrences on my dad's side. So you feel like that's where this came, the DNA part of it in your family was on your dad's side.
I think it was primarily on my dad's side, but I know that my mother had she would have visions, and there were a number of things that happened over the years. So I know that she had these abilities as well, but it was more prominent with my dad and my grandfather, and according to Paul, his dad, as well.
With the numerous animals he had, he lived next door to us. He recognized my abilities when I was somewhere around 3 or 4. That's when kids have no filter. I think we
I still
activate.
don't have a filter.
Well, that's because nobody got in your way. They encouraged you.
Yes.
They encouraged you. So many families say, oh, that's just their imagination. Or you didn't have that dream. Or nowadays they would say, you read a story, you saw it on TV, and this is what you took off with it. But it makes us sound so old when I say, back in those days, when you were born, when I was born, and you're a lot younger than I am, you were fortunate to be born into a family that didn't stifle. They encouraged you. And that's wonderful for your grandfather to recognize it and not stifle you at 3 and 4, because we are so active. We're still so connected to the other side until in our society, we go to school. And that's when we have to start following rules, unless we grew up in a very strict home before that. So you were one of the lucky ones. You were one of the lucky ones, girl. I'm happy for you. You said you spent most of your free time there.
Yes.
With your papa.
Yeah. I was basically a shadow. And the name that I currently use is because of him.
Orannhawk?
Yes. His name was Oren. And that was to have been my name until my dad discovered that I was a girl and he wanted me named Linda.
Okay.
Papa continued to talk, he called me Oren. He also called me his little hawk because I was constantly shadowing him every day. And at some point, it became Orannhawk. And that's the name that I currently use with my writing, with my artwork, and with my readings. Things like Instagram, it's under Linda Orannhawk. But that's how I'm known now. And that's kind of a nod to him because of the way that he nurtured me and helped me to grow spiritually.
And throughout your writing, especially the early part of it that you sent me, you refer to animals and feathers and rocks that you needed as a child. And I think you put needed in semi-quote. So I get that. The little dishes in the playhouse were filled with dried plants and dirt, and I mixed them together in a strange little mud pack to put on any scratches I had. Boy, that's past life healing memories. Big time.
Yes.
Packing in onto the horses if I deemed it necessary in my mind. He taught me to ask before I gathered anything and to leave offerings. That's very much American Indian. So, and further on, you mentioned that. So tell me about that.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I am mixed blood, and it is, I've done the research, but it's all been done by name. I've never done that blood stuff, that DNA thing, because I didn't need to. I am blood connected to multiple tribes, to Spain, to Ireland, to Scotland, to Wales, and a little bit of England. And I've got a listing of direct line descendants or ancestors that go back, well over 50 or 60 back. So it's many generations back.
Wonder if we've crossed paths, because I've got Ireland, my grandmother, my grandfather, on my mom's side, he came from England. And of course, I wouldn't be surprised if I had some scotch there somewhere. So I wonder if we've crossed paths.
It's certainly
past lives. We'll have to figure that out sooner or later. That'd be fun.
It would be. It would be.
Offers range from small amounts of tobacco. That's very American in English. Indian. Offerings range from small amounts of tobacco or cornmeal in his truck, or I might leave a favorite rock, a bit of my hair, or even tiny toys. I was well aware that he, along with my dad, walked both worlds. I love that phrase. I heard plenty of stories from the aunties about my great-grandfather who carried the abilities as well. But I want to go back, walking both worlds. Do you feel like you're still walking in both worlds? One foot in...
Yeah, I always have. I mean, that was how Papa described it to me when I was a kid. And he told me, he said, it doesn't mean that you're halfway here or halfway there. It's just simply that you have the ability to see the other side, to communicate with the other side. And he said, so, you know, you walk both worlds. You have access to both. And that's the way that it's always felt. Although it's kind of multiple worlds from what I've discovered now. I mean, it's not, you know, either or, it's multiple.
What other worlds do you feel you have touched base with or have introduced themselves to you?
Well, you know, the star people are very, very prominent in my life, and they always have been. I've had past life memories of being in different locations. I've had physical contact, and this has been acknowledged and viewed, if you will, by other people. So a lot of it is literally different worlds or different dimensions. And I mean, I sometimes have had experiences where, you know, in broad daylight, things would shimmer out and I would see different things. And, you know, it might be at night, but a lot of times it's just bright and sunny outside. And then I see a shimmer like that, you know, it does when it's really, really hot and you're like in a desert area. But it's bigger. I mean, you get a broad vision. You see right through them.
It's almost like a portal.
Yes. I've discovered over the years that even though I have lived in multiple places, I seem to have portals that open up for me in every place that I've lived. Yeah.
That's the question I want to ask you about portals. Let me interrupt you for just a second.
Okay.
Do you think we take our portals with us? Like we take a key for a door? Or do you think the portals are already there and exposed to us? I know portals stay still. I know that. I've seen them in forest. I've seen them in wooded areas mostly that I know have been there endlessly. And I think some of the portals are created by sky beings, some by earthling beings, and they don't move. And if we see them, there's a reason why we do. But I also feel like when I have moved, I have brought a portal with me. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that?
I think it's both. There are definitely some that are stationary, and then there are others that open up because we carry the keys.
Got it. And nobody else can get through? Or get through only with our permission, so to speak?
If you lock it down, nobody's coming through.
One way or the other.
I mean, it's other psychics, other people who are on this same journey with us will recognize it if they, like I mentioned my friend who got to meet Felix and, did some fairs with us. The first time that she walked in my house, she said, this house is like a way station, like a train station, except not for trains. And she said, you've got portals that are just popping up all over the place. It's like, yeah, I do. But I also have the ability to control them.
That's one of the hardest things for practicing psychics to manage is the focus of control. And I sometimes I think spirit lets us believe we control it. Really, when in reality, yes, we've learned the techniques so we can turn on and off, like we're doing fairs and readings and such. I think that's important. But when we're by ourselves doing the work we need to do individually, which of course the public, I think, sometimes thinks we sit around and meditate all day. We don't, by the way. We have lives, as Linda will share with you in a little while. But it's one of the reasons why I want this podcast is to have the public know that we are walking, talking individual humans having a spiritual experience. They are too. They just do it a different way. A way station is a good way to describe what you do and where you do it. Do you do your readings at home these days, or how do you do your readings?
I do a lot of them by phone. Of course, I am doing the fairs and stuff again.
Where are you doing fairs?
So I'm actually doing a lot of fairs with Cheryl Martin's group, which is they Heaven Earth. I'm trying to find the name here in my own notes. I can't find it.
Well, you can tell me later if you find them. That's okay. You can say, hey, Elaine, I found them. It's okay. I know.
Well, they're in San Marcos, and then we also do Wimberley. And, it's Heaven Pathways Earth. And, in the very beginning when I started with her, we did one a month. And then after the pandemic, we kind of switched it up. And now we're doing, she alternates because she also does the one at Wimberley. So we alternate doing San Marcos, and then usually the next month we do Wimberley. Like I've got one coming up in September in San Marcos, and then October in Wimberley. But a lot of it has just been by phone.
We're in Wimberley. I know the area. We'll have an international following here. Wimberley, Texas is in the hill country of Central Texas. Beautiful, beautiful little town. They've tried hard to keep it little. San Marcos is a college town, which is just ballooning. It's just absolutely ballooning. And it goes south towards San Antonio, where you take a turn and off to the left, to the right, to get to off of the main road, so to speak, to get to Wimberley. But it's very picturesque. And it's in the past, it has been a place where people that were very creative, beautiful art shows, jewelry creators, pottery, that sort of thing. Very, very open-minded. Writers. In fact, there were musicians and famous people that would buy a place in Wimberley so they could hide, kind of thing. And San Marcos was kind of that way for a while, too. So Linda and I both live in country-oriented areas. Me so more than her. And I'm not naming the town you live in for your privacy. If you want to mention it, you can. But it is still a country-ish town. I go through there, go near there quite often on my way to San Marcos. So, and when I taught school, I had a teacher friend that I would occasionally take home. It was really country then, really country. We didn't have a major inner highway at that time. I don't know if you were out there then or not. That's been 30 years ago plus.
Well, I was born and raised here, so I've
You were
seen
there.
explode. Literally, it's completely different now.
Back to dimensions. Do you think we carry our portals and dimensions portals with us to make sure we can still do the work that we are intended to do, or do you think Spirit gives us another way of doing them, with or without the portal?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's kind of like, in my opinion, based on our development at that time and how we are connecting and what we are experiencing. If we need that, then they give it to us. If we don't need it at the time, it's, we can still do the work, but it's kind of like a booster.
A tool, another tool.
Yes, it's another tool.
On your notes that you sent me, 35 years as a professional, multidimensional intuitive, channel, and medium. We talked about the multidimensional intuitive. I love that phrase, by the way. Channel, comma, medium. How do you see the difference between channels and mediums? What's your description of being different?
Yeah, every time that I do a reading, on some level, I am channeling because I am being shown, or I hear, or I feel and sense, or, there's that understanding that I'm receiving this information. When I'm working as a medium, I tend to go into trances pretty quick. Sometimes light trance, sometimes I do deep trance. And when I'm working as a medium, I'm generally connecting with the other side to people that have crossed over. And so I'll have conversations with them and relay information back. There's a distinction, and at the same time, it's not black and white either.
I think all psychics are channels. I don't think all psychics are mediums.
Yes.
And I used to think to myself, why are they calling themselves a psychic medium? You're psychic, you're psychic. You're medium, you're medium. But for me, mediumship is actually, as a channel, somebody coming through. But mediumship, to me, and this is my personal opinion, that's why I ask you yours, is when somebody truly kind of takes over, where you can see their facial features, you can see their habitual, how they may have held their hand. Somebody told me one time that it looked like I had a cigarette in my hand the whole time I was talking. To me, that's a medium, somebody that's coming through. But I think not all psychics, but most psychics do the channeling thing because of what you just said. They give us information to relay. Mediums talk for themselves. And since I said that, I've seen mediums that said they want me to tell you, and they want me to point at you a certain way. They want me to stand up and stand like you used to stand all the time. To me, that's another form of /psychic mediumship. So it can get a little bit confusing, public, which is why I ask almost everyone I have a conversation with what their technique and what their opinion of those two words are. So bear with us. It may help you with your understanding of perhaps what you're experiencing as you develop psychically. 35 years. You really have more than that, girl. You call it professional. That word professional means you finally started doing it for the public and or taking money
Exactly.
for it. But you know you've done it all your life.
Well, before that, I just scared people. I mean, my classmates, most of them were afraid of me or they loved me.
Or they wanted to be around you because you were different and cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like too the word multiclaire, C-L-A-I-R-E. Audio. What do we call it? Audio claire. What are the clairs?
Well,
I forgot.
you know, clairaudient, clairsentient, that type of thing. Um, when I start to tune in, I don't always know how I'm going to receive it. And like I said, I mean, sometimes I hear them speaking to me. I do have some who will hold up a giant chalkboard, and I don't see the figures as much as I do just like chalk going across the board. And they'll write information, they'll draw me pictures. I never really know how it's going to come in. I think they like to surprise me.
Get your attention.
Get my attention.
Yeah. Multiclaire. And it also says you've used stones as a conduit between spirit and client. 33 individual stones chose to join me in this method. Occasionally, clients have brought other objects that I have incorporated into their readings. I love that. You're the one and only person that I have seen that I know of that does that. Now, I know people that work with stones all the time. That's not an issue. But individual stones, and then you acknowledge objects that are not yours to be incorporated. I love that. Hi, puppy. Introduce us to the pup. Who's this?
My dog is River, and I frequently call her my house hippo because she's about 65 pounds. And she is a blue nose fawn and white pit bull.
Oh, that's a nice mixture.
And she has gold eyes like me.
I remember your gold eyes. You used to wear contacts. I don't remember whether you had contacts the other day or not.
They're clear.
Did what?
The contacts are clear.
I don't remember your eyes being as yellow as they used to be.
It depends on what I'm wearing. When I wear different color clothes, or if I put on different colors of eye makeup, or my moods change, they look orange. They'll look real yellow green, or just yellow. And interestingly enough, my dad had one eye that was this amber color, and the other eye was a silver gray.
How pretty. How pretty. Did your eye color give you issues growing up with the kids? Because that's very unusual.
It did. I had interesting nicknames. We'll just leave that one alone. But yeah.
And see, in our group, it's like almost a stamp of approval, or a stamp of, let's recognize this person, pay attention to this person. Something that unusual. I always thought they were beautiful. Anyway, okay. We mentioned star, extraterrestrial, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Come on now. I don't want to do that. Okay. Let me get back over here. You said something about working on a landing page. You're creating a landing page for.
I'm in the process of it, and I hopefully will have that up soon.
Yes, because you need to have you need to put your catalog, your schedule on it, if nothing else.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to go back to the extraterrestrial conversations with your dad and your granddad regarding seeing ships, as they had many sightings too. There was a vendor, Crystal and Stones, that used to set up at CTPA fairs, and he also was at the fair in Corpus and witnessed a particular event, and even gifted me with a small clear case, CASC, for the object I was gifted with. And I have to say, to this day, I don't recall his name. I just remember his booth space was quite large, and usually in the same space in the center of the rooms when we were in Austin, and the readers were along the outer edges. Yeah. Wish I could recall his name. He gave me a very large chord CTPA fairs one weekend. When I told him I could hear it singing to me, I wonder if that was Cindy and Dennis. Do you know?
I only remember the guy.
I still take that same large crystal with me to the fairs. I remember him shaking his head because he knew exactly which one it was, and there are natural indentions on it with my fingers fit like a glove. I love it. When I read that the first time, I was trying to remember back then who was at the fairs. Nature's Treasures was not doing the fairs with us at that time. If you go all the way back to Julie, because we did some fairs in Julie with Luttrell and Julie Vogt, and I was trying to remember who all the vendors were. I don't think Cindy and Dennis went that far back with us. I think they showed up with Luttrell, and then later they're not doing our fairs anymore. We lost Dennis about a year ago. Cindy doesn't travel by herself from Oklahoma. I don't think it was them, but there was a married couple, and sometimes she was there and sometimes she wasn't with him, that had a beautiful set of tables for their display. I'm going to ask Marilyn, because when she inherited the fair from Luttrell gave her all the history, just like she had inherited the fair from Julie. That fair has never been sold. It's always been inherited, passed down from woman to woman to woman. And with it, from woman to woman, goes all the records that they kept.
Awesome.
So I can ask Marilyn if she'll do a deep dive into some of her records and see if we can find that guy's name for you, just so you'll have it as a piece of your personal history. I'll see if I can do that for you. Professional artist, fine commercial art, visionary. I'm moving over here. And realism, as well as channel much of my art. This is all about you as an artist. And we haven't even begun to talk about your books, which I think is, when I first met Linda, she was writing, I think, her very first, maybe her second novel. So now you are a multi-published writer, correct?
I have not published any of the books yet.
Oh, that's right.
I'm rewriting several of them, but I have been writing for the magazine now for 14 years.
Which magazine?
And it's called Whisper and Thunder.
What is it called?
Online only.
What's the first word?
Whisper. And then the letter N, and then Thunder.
Whisper and Thunder. Is that yours?
No.
Okay, so that's a magazine. Okay, public. It's online only. So I'm going to go find that. I'm so glad that you referred to that. We will add that in the library under your name. I'm going to have didn't I tell you? I may have told you all this before. We're going to have a library that will list books and these days, YouTubes or whatever those are called, reference material where public can go to learn from them, places and books that were important for our guest, that are important to help their development, to keep in touch with what's happening, that sort of thing. So this magazine will help you keep in touch with what Linda's doing and how she's growing and what's going on with her. So, professional artist, why professional? As channeled spirit paintings. I love that. Tell me about that. Tell us about that. Much of your art is created in a semi-trance state. Okay, go for it.
Well, I started painting shortly after I turned 13. My mother had bought a little 4-tube set of paint. I think she got it at Tandy's because she wanted to do some little craftsy thing. She promised I could have the extra paint, but she wanted to do her thing first. I kind of broke the promise. I used every bit of the paint up. And at the time, my dad was showing a lot of his metal art in San Antonio in one of the shops on the Riverwalk. And he told the guy that I painted. So I painted a big picture of wildlife. My dad took it over there. And it sold when I was 13. And that was my very first art sale. And it's one of the things that I've always known. It's interesting. I was talking to a childhood classmate, and she told me that she could remember me announcing in class when the teacher gave us a prompt what I was going to be when I grew up. And I told him I'm going to write stories, I'm going to paint, and I talk to dead people. She remembered that all these years.
And I talk to dead people. And that's exactly what you do. Plus,
I do.
You in 2007, you participated in a unique interactive gallery in the Bay Area in California. You designed the Native Room, where you created art, multimedia sculpture, photography, and timelines connecting with Oakland Intertribal Friendship House.
Well, the timelines were actually connected to the tribes in California.
Okay.
And I am a member of Oakland Intertribal, but that was not connected with this exhibit. We went and interviewed multiple people for these stories, and they all became extended family to me. And I created the installations and the art based on their stories. So when visitors would come in, they would hear the music that I would choose. And then as they went to each part of this room, they would hear the stories that were recorded by each one of the individuals. So it tied in with their story and with my art. And it was a very profound event. It was very unusual working in this building. It was actually an older building that was built, I believe, in World War II, and it was for the Navy. But the location of this was actually built on a shell mound, which was an area in the Bay Area where some of the natives lived. There were shells, there were burial remains there. And unfortunately, a lot of these shell mounds have been completely desecrated there. So I would spend all day working on this room, but by the time maybe 9 or 10 o'clock rolled around, we would have to leave because the energy was so intense and there was so much movement there. Nobody felt safe. I felt relatively safe because of my bloodlines. But at the same time, we all left the building. And a lot of that was just a sign of respect. There were a lot of interesting things that happened there. And I took photographs every day of my progress. And I actually ended up buying a second camera because initially I thought that my camera was broken because there were orbs in every picture that I took. I tried the new camera, they were still there. Then it hit me, it's like, oh, it's not the camera. There was spirits coming in. And I had that same experience when I went out to Alcatraz with some of the extended family. Every picture I took was full of orbs.
Alcatraz?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Orbs, the round ones, there are so many images these days that show up on photographs that look like swooshes or shapes. Laura, Laura Tree, she takes pictures in her backyard and she just gets spirits everywhere. But in the old days, if it was an orb, a round piece, it was considered to be a happy space. But the other energies are coming through all the time now and showing up on cameras, on film.
One of the earliest things that I did after I moved in this house, after I put my son to bed, I would go to my dining room, have all the lights turned off, and I would light a single candle, and I would sit at my table and just wait. And it would normally take maybe about 15 or 20 minutes, and then there were orbs that would literally come in from the other rooms, and they would just float around the entire house.
I love it. You know, if you have pictures that you have access to still, when you create your website, post some of them.
I can.
As examples of your work, if nothing else, but the fact that they exist.
Yes.
That would be awesome. If you have any pictures of that exhibit, that I would love to see that.
I do have some. One of my uncles, members of his family were in the boarding schools, and I wanted a way to draw a lot of attention to that. It's still being discussed even to this day. I bought a child's mannequin, and of course, back then when you bought a mannequin, it was a little white mannequin. So I took it out in the front yard where I was living in California, and I used several different colors of spray paint to get it the right tone of red-brown. I bought a wig, and I put it on the boy, I braided it, and then I took an old knife and I sawed off the bottoms end of it. I went to, I think it was Salvation Army, and I bought a little boy's suit, and I remade that thing so that it appeared like the little uniforms that they forced the children to wear. And interestingly enough, when I was kind of sewing down some of this, hand sewing it, the needle hit my finger and I bled all over it. And I left that there. I had photographs of some of the before and afters of Native children after they were removed from their homes, and some of the enclosures where they were kept, And I do have some good pictures of that. It was a difficult thing to do.
Was it cathartic for you?
It was, and I think a lot of that was because, knowing and becoming family with some of these people who had dealt with this in their lifetimes and their parents' lifetimes, it was challenging and painful.
How did you work through that for your own growth?
A lot of talking. I did a lot of offerings when I was doing that exhibit. Offerings when I would go in, offerings before I left. I would talk to the orbs and talk to the spirits that I felt in there. I didn't ever smudge it. It felt inappropriate to do that, as if I was, to smudge it. It would have felt like that I was trying to clean their energy out of there, and I didn't want to do that because they belonged there. And I was content with that.
Did any come with you when you came back here?
No, but I've had that happen before with other places that I've been.
Me too.
Bring somebody home, but I was okay.
Yeah, they usually just come visit. I had a little boy that came and lived with me for, no matter where I lived, for over 30 years. And then he came and said goodbye.
Wow.
And that was it. It was time for him I knew he was going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. He wasn't stuck. It was his choice. He'd gotten permission to go back and forth. And then he was sweet enough to come and say, okay, I'm leaving. And he literally left me in meditation. He left me a list of what he was thanking me for. And he told me, he said, you should travel more. And I jokingly said, only if you'll travel with me. And then he got sad and he said, no, I can't anymore. So I had a suspicion that he was ready to come back in form, wherever that was, whatever planet that was going to be, whatever form that was going to be, was why he would not be able to come and go. So that's why I asked you that question, if any of them came with you. So you worked in the, you even became a licensed massage therapist in the 90s, although you no longer practice.
Yes.
It's very healing. I can understand why you probably stopped, but you went to a lot of trouble to become a licensed massage therapist. So why did you decide to, if you want to share that, to no longer practice?
There were a number of reasons. I had moved to New Mexico, and to practice there, I was going to, at some point, need to get licensed there, which would mean that I would have to go back into school because their requirements were different than here in Texas.
Yeah.
And about that same time, Texas changed because we would pay according to our last name. They had it scheduled, for a while I was paying on a yearly basis, and then they changed it. Some people are going to pay by the year. If you're between this and this in the alphabet, you're going to pay for 2 years, or you're going to prepay for 3. And I ended up in the latter.
Wow.
And at that point, I didn't think that I was going to be moving back to Texas, and I didn't have the extra money to pay that. And so it didn't get paid. And when I came back to Texas, I would still have to go back and I would have to go and get relicensed again. So I chose not to do it.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
Yeah. Well, that's New Mexico. They have some strange things.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, Reiki master teacher, received first 2 degrees 34 years ago. That was a hard time back then to get degrees in Reiki. It was different than it is now. And
Yes.
master levels in Usui,
Yes.
USUI, and Tibetan within the following 2 years. That's a lot of studying. That's a lot of studying. You joined CTPA somewhere around 88 or 89. My initial interview reading was with Janie Mata. You know, we lost Janie less than a year ago, but we still lost her. Did you know that?
Yes. I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, and was invited to Janie's house for a Sunday gathering there. Felix Garcia, sweet, sweet man. Sweet man. He was a reader with CTPA.
Yes.
Healer.
Yep. Absolutely amazing guy.
Yeah, he was. He was an amazing talent. Amazing. I remember him quite well. He was colorful and he was outgoing and he was fun. And I would love to get a group of people, because I'm going to have an arm on this podcast of people who have passed away. They'll go under the legends list. And I'd love to, if you want to get a group of people, family, friends, clients, to talk about Felix, because he can't talk for himself unless he comes through somebody that night or that day. And it's gonna, I'm calling it, I'm going to call it Me Plus Three, maybe, or open. That's usually going to be a focused topic conversation, but for those folks, it's going to be called something else. I'm not quite sure, but I want to honor the legends that can no longer speak for themselves. So think about who you would like to do that with, and we'll set up a time. And it can all be done on Zip. That's no problem. And family, friends, people he worked with, whoever you think could have the best and most memories of Felix, so we can get him on the list.
My son would go up with me. We usually go, sometimes once a month. Sometimes it was a few weeks past that. But he absolutely adored Felix. And my son was, because he used to go to a lot of fairs with me too.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember him.
You know, I know you would remember at some of the CTPA fairs, they would have the long table with all of the pictures of water and ice.
Yes.
My son would walk around and go refill water for all of the vendors and the readers. I mean, he was very, very quiet. But he would go around and do that and run into there's several places in hotels. He'd go buy drinks for somebody. I mean, he was like a little runner. And interestingly enough, before the fairs would open, he would sit down and he would read for some of the readers too. Which was pretty interesting considering how young he was.
He was very young. Yes.
Yes.
Has he kept that up? Is he still reading?
He doesn't do that per se. If I ask him to look at something for me, he will. But he said, that's more of your thing. But he does have the gift.
Maybe he'll use it more later. What age group is he in now?
He is 42.
No.
Yeah.
No. He was a little boy. What happened?
He was a little boy. And I remember in Felix's right when you would walk in the apartment, the little kitchen was to the left, and then you'd come like into the living room. And right inside the living room wall, he had a sword on the wall. It was a replica of the Excalibur sword. My son swore from the very first moment he saw that, I'm going to have one of those. Still hanging here in his room. Hasn't moved it to his apartment yet, but he finally got his sword. And sometimes he calls it the Felix sword, because that's where he saw it first, was at Felix's.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, I had forgotten all about Psychic Friends Network. So many people that I knew tried to read for that group and did. And you even say putting in horrendous hours for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah. You know, Appleseed Productions. I don't know if you have any connections with them still, but I know the two ladies that started that group passed. I don't know whether Pat.
Well, I know that Margaret did. I used to, a lot of times when I would be in Austin for one of the fairs, because her son was not always at home, and Margaret would let me use her son's room, and I'd stay over for the weekend at Margaret's house. And when she crossed over, he called me personally to let me know.
I did a couple of Appleseed fairs, and I think Pat Cuny helped to support them through some things, and I've been I have her phone number. I've left a message for her, but they took the fairs out of state. They moved. Am I remembering correctly? Appleseed?
Yeah.
And I don't know that they did any more in Austin after they officially moved. I don't remember. So I'll have to do some double.
We did, all the ones that I did were here in Texas. I remember going to Odessa. I remember going to Midland. I went to Corpus. Corpus was where I had that little gift from the Star People. And I know there were several other places, because we would carpool to go to these, because they were always 2 days and we would stay overnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I loved those. I met so many wonderful people.
I love doing fairs.
Interesting. Most people think, when the fair ends, we all just disperse and everybody just goes to their room and goes to sleep. That's not how it was.
No. No.
We used to get together in rooms and we would continue to do energy work, or real often I would go into a deep trance and I would channel for whoever was in there. And we would do that for hours after the fair.
Yep.
So didn't get a lot of sleep on those trips.
Nowadays, usually here in Austin with Maryland's fairs, we set up on Friday afternoon. Those of us that can. And we just set up our tables and get out of the way and, do it more privately. Occasionally, we'll have some people who have to come in on Saturday morning and set up, but she opens the fair very early, so opens the doors so people can do that hopefully before the fair starts. And then on Saturday, she has encouraged us to get together very much like Latrell and Julie did, to join for a dinner. And it can be a long table, but we sit, we visit, we get up, we talk around, we take pictures. And then, of course, Sunday, the hotels usually like for us to be out as soon as we can so they can get everything cleaned up for whatever is happening for the week. And quite often we would, especially when Cindy and Dennis were doing the fairs or Nature's Treasures, when they had their really big layouts, we'd tear down our tables, and then we'd come back in and help somebody else, even if it was getting things to the car. So we do continue to experience friendship and camaraderie at the fairs. And I told Mac Kenneth yesterday, he was one of the people that did aura photos for years and years and years. And I told him, I said, so many of us are getting so much older these days that I go now just to see the people, because I never know when I'm saying goodbye. We could say that 50 years ago, but the older you get, the more realization there is of that. And especially after COVID, because we lost so many people around the nation in our field or related to our field, like bookkeepers and jewelry makers and, that's artists, that sort of thing, to COVID, that I haven't traveled a lot, but I came back to Austin in 2000. I did a couple of fairs out of town, but then I had to take care of Mom and my aunt and just stopped. And then COVID hit. And I haven't been out of town to do fairs, not even up the road to some of the smaller fairs. I just haven't. So I'd like to do that again. But the Austin Fair brings in so many of the people that I've known for so long, and I want to see them as often as I can. So whether I make my table fee or not, I've just thrown my hands up and shown up and just enjoyed it, and just enjoyed the vibe, enjoyed the energy. So, and I've gone to some fairs not a participant, but to see people, because this community has been so good to me and so nurturing, all the way back to apple seeds and beyond. And I didn't do many apple seeds, but I sure enjoyed. It was a different group of people. Almost every fair you do is a different group of people, it seems like, or not the same. Let me rephrase that. It's not the same people over and over and over again. When I used to go to Colorado, talk about a starseed family and an American Indian family. I went just to be with them. They were in Colorado Springs and Denver, and it was well worth the trip, whether you made your fees or not, just to meet the people. It was wonderful. Okay, back to you. Regular rotating schedule at New Age Books. I did that too on South Lamar when Ted and Cheryl had it. Great. Now that's a big shopping center. Participated in one of the first Whole Life Expos. Yeah. I wasn't at the first one. I went to the first one, multi-leveled as it was. It was quite an experience, but I participated in the second one and maybe the third one. That was interesting. Were you there when the Tibetan monks came in unexpectedly and did their sand design?
Yes.
You there? Yeah, that one. I went to that one.
Remember that.
Yeah, and they left there and went out to Mary Thunder's ranch.
Been there.
Totally unexpected. They just showed up with the proper gifts. And of course, they stayed and camped, I understand. But what an experience that was to see them. I miss that. I miss that kind of sharing. The Whole Life Expos are not the same anymore. I don't know if you've been to any lately, but they're just not. Not since the brothers split up and went their separate ways. They just haven't been the same. Not at all. But they sure were fun. Currently, you do readings with Heaven, Pathways, Earth Dash, Metaphysical, and Holy. We talked about that. Private sessions by phone.
Yes.
We will print your phone numbers, your email. So if you get your site set up, I'll be notifying you about what date you will be presented. And you'll be reviewing what we're going to post about you with your permission, because this bio, we can post this bio, every bit of it if you want to. But to introduce your scheduling, we'll pull a little bit here and a little bit there out of it. They'll hear us talking about this, your bio, so it's going to be covered anyway. But you'll have a hand in deciding what little snippets we are going to advertise you with. But during that, we will include your any of your social media contacts, any of them. wherever you are. So work on getting that landing page, kid. And comments like private sessions by phone, clients in the US, the UK, Bali, Hong Kong, ... Yes, you are internationally known. We should describe you as an internationally known practicing psychic. You will be under the Ancients list. Ancients group.
Okay.
Yay. Now I have some questions for you.
Okay.
CTPA. What was the hardest thing about working with CTPA? You got very involved, as was I. We were both on the board. You were on the board, I think, weren't you?
I was on the board now.
I was thinking that you were. You were just there so often that I thought you were, and so loyal. But what was, as a reader, as a participant, what was difficult about CTPA, and what was kind of a blessing for you as an organization?
I don't think that anything was difficult, but I remember initially it was a little confusing when you first came in as a new reader. They had that levels, and you were only allowed to charge a certain amount per level, which I think at that time was based on how many fairs you had done.
And how long you'd been
in.
Yeah, and how long you'd been doing the work. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
I mean, it was kind of puzzling to me because I'd never really experienced anything like that before. So, but it wasn't a problem. I loved going through them.
That was based on what North Texas Parapsychology Association, how they were handling their fairs.
Oh,
because
okay.
it was a model. It was a model. And we eventually dropped it. But Joe Nichols came from North Texas, and he was on the board, and he was helping to create the policies, so to speak. Colonel Jackson was not happy about it, but he said, let's try it. And it happened. We had been having little fairs at our office, the Central Texas Parapsychology offices. And then when we decided to get bigger and bigger, that's why that was established. And like I said, it was eventually dropped. But yeah, there were a lot of us that didn't like that at all. Just because you hadn't been doing it for the public very long didn't mean you weren't good enough to charge what you needed to charge. So,
exactly.
To at least make your table fees, with back then compared to today, was not that much, but still. What did you enjoy about the organization itself the most?
Besides the camaraderie.
Yeah.
Because everybody that I met was always friendly, and I never felt like that there was a competition between the readers. You just didn't have that feeling.
There's more of a system.
Everybody was willing to help. And, when I first started with CTPA, I was using nothing at my table. I just put a cloth on there, put out my business cards, and sat down. Felix was the one that told me I needed to have something that, the clients could actually either see or touch or something. And he asked me, do you do tarot? And I said, no, I just play with them, but I don't use them as a tool. Don't use the runes. And he said, well, come up with something. So I came home after that weekend, and I did a meditation. I connected to Papa. I connected to my dragon. And they both said, rocks.
Rocks. Yes. Rocks.
I grew up in a rock house. We had rocks on the inside of the house, on the outside of the house. Walk into my grandfather's house next door, and there was rocks out there too. but he had rocks stacked in the corners of his room. That was his special room. And so gradually, I just, when a small tumblestone spoke to me, I'd get it. And, I started out with just a small handful. I ended up with these 33. And that's what I have used for, I don't know, at least 25 years. It's been the same set of rocks.
33, that's a master number numerologically.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not intentional. That's
just the public knows.
But once, and I didn't have access to, like a printing company local or anything. So I designed my own sign and I painted it. And, I drew all of my stones on there, painted them. I drew my dragon on there. I have that sign somewhere. And that's what I started out with.
In the old days, we used to send out postcards, which was really expensive. Nowadays, of course, we can send out notices. We can advertise in a number of ways that were not even available at the time. But so many of us would send out postcards, and that was expensive. So we would have people sign in, and they didn't have to use their last name, but we would tell them why we would like to send you a postcard to announce. And some people would include their information, and some wouldn't. Then, as computers became a bigger thing, we just asked for emails, and sometimes they would, and sometimes they wouldn't. My thing was, I've got classes starting, fairs coming up, and sometimes we would put the schedule, if we had even just one or two other things that would be coming up in the next month or two, classes starting on. It's so much easier now to get our names and our information to the public. Of course, sometimes they can click delete and block, too. But at least it is. At least we have other options. Did you run into that difficulty? I like the idea that you handmade your cards. If people own them, still have them, still could be collector's items.
I did get business cards later on, but this was my bigger sign for my table. It was difficult though, because I ran into the same problem of people didn't really want to reveal too much.
Yeah.
And I understood that. Coming from a small town, it's not really something that you always talk about. And
with other guests, I've talked about some briefly, some in depth, about us being underground. And I'm a lot older than you are. And my first reading was when I was 17 for the public. But I, like you, grew up in a welcoming household. And it was the mother of a teenage friend of mine. Her mother called my mother, got permission, that kind of thing. Mother said I couldn't charge anything. I think the lady brought something like a pie or a cake or something. I can't remember. Anyway, she was gracious to bring something. And I was one of the weirdos at school, and her daughter and I were good friends, and she wasn't considered a weirdo. People would wonder why she ran around with me, but she was different in other ways. She was more open-minded. She was not a gossiper. If somebody was gossiping, she'd get up and walk away. She was different in her own way, and we had a lot of fun together. But that was a time frame when we had to hide. That was there was a reader downtown that was, all of a sudden, her name just left me. She was in the university area, and the police had arrested her several times. She knew they were coming for the fortune-telling laws that are still on the books in Austin, Texas area. And police could walk into any psychic fair and arrest everybody, because we see, hear, feel, smell, know things that other people don't. And
exactly.
Yeah. So they're still on the books, although now legally they'd get a lot of blowback. We're back in her time frame. They wouldn't so much, obviously. But she's a shoulder that we stand on because she went through so much. Well, I noticed that in my 20s and 30s, there was this up and down, up and down, up and down. I didn't really have business cards, even at the first fairs. I didn't have business cards until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. And I was very careful about what I put on it. And now I'm seeing a little bit more of that pressure. We live in the Bible Belt. We've had to deal with that, even though I've got some what I think are cute stories about readers and Bibles. Some readers can go head to head with just about any Bible out there if somebody wants to sit down at their table and go that route. But including the Jewish community and East Indian community and American Indian community, we're different. But we've had to go up and down and back into hiding. We've had people stop doing fairs. We've had people stop doing readings, even by phone, out of fear for themselves and their family. The police departments worked with John Catchings openly. I was on his team a couple of times. I had known John since he was throwing baseball bats when he walked in the back door. I'd get a reading at least once a year from his mom, Bertie. And they were really part of the establishment of North Texas Parapsychology. But when you were doing the fairs, and you're doing smaller fairs now, well, they're smaller for now, do you see a difference in the public and their behavior when they come in and their attitudes compared to when you first began? Do you see a difference? How?
I think the younger people and the older people are more open. When you hit that midpoint, there's a lot of people that are still very leery of it.
Yes.
And I mean, that's kind of to be expected. I've even had some of my relatives come into one of these fairs, and there's this look of recognition and excitement and then panic because they don't really want anybody to know where they've gone.
Yeah.
My dad used to call me sometimes and tell me, got a friend that wants to visit with you. And I knew exactly what that meant. He was setting up readings for me. And some of these people did not want to be identified. And I mean, they would write a check, but they'd make up all sorts of things to put on that little notation on the bottom of the check.
Oh, absolutely. Still do. We don't get many checks, but so.
You know, they don't want people to know.
Even when somebody sends me money through, they charge or Venmo or something like that. I had one lady not long ago write coffee.
Yeah.
Now, who spends $145 for coffee?
Exactly.
Or $95 for half of an hour. Yeah, they still do it. We also have people, it's interesting, you can tell who's been to church. They're a little bit dressed up more on Sundays. They'll go to church, they'll go to lunch, then they'll come to the psychic fair. And I just smile, and I don't mean to be sarcastic about it at all. I think it's wonderful that they would combine both because it is one and the same. I firmly believe spirit is spirit, you know. But then we'll also have the people that'll walk in the door and they'll look around. They'll sit down at the table and they'll continue to see if they know anybody there. I told a lady one time, I leaned over, and I didn't touch her, but I leaned over and I said, you know, if you see somebody that is here that you know and knows you, you've both got a secret. So let's enjoy your reading. And she finally relaxed, but she hadn't looked at it that way. You know, so there's still some caution, and I think caution is coming back because for a while our fairs were just, we couldn't get to, every reader had a full day, both days. Maybe it was the newness of it. There were not as many readers and support systems like the bookstores and such. Maybe there were the curiosity going in from the 70s to the 80s and even into the early 90s. It was a fairly new thing, like the psychic lines were. And then when the psychic lines started, we noticed a downswing at the fairs. But then they went up again. And now we're noticing that there's a downswing, especially on Sundays, which I think was interesting. The last fair we had here was an odd time. Traditionally, for me, my Saturday is usually pretty full, or whatever that means. Sunday will mean almost half. It's interesting how the waves go. But there's so many good practitioners out there that people can call. Even on some of the lines, you've got a lot of talent on the lines, and that can be less expensive than going to a reader for 30 minutes or an hour. So there are all kinds of reasons, but the acceptance of the public. I remember you as being a favorite at the fairs. You still have an excellent reputation.
Thank you.
But the public has changed. You're right. The young and the older. But then I think the older we get, the more we accept spirit and varieties of belief systems. The younger we are, we don't know any different. We're just trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out how to walk and talk and chew gum all at the same time. You know, and it can be difficult.
A lot of people that come in expect it to be, oh, this is just going to be some fly-by-night stuff. And then when you tell them something that, that you've seen, that you're being shown, their whole demeanor shifts.
Yes.
I had one person that, it was actually a couple, and I don't remember if it was the male or the female, but one of them spoke up and they said, well, usually this is just, you ask for a question or something, and you just kind of feed into it by our body language. And I just smiled and I said, whatever you want to look at. The majority of the time, I don't ask questions. I just go straight in. And I remember informing this couple that they were going to make a big move. They asked where. I told them, and I said, oh, by the way, you're going to have a baby after you get there. I didn't see him again actually, I didn't see him again at all. And then I got a phone call probably about 1.5 2 years later. They were in the exact place that I told them they were going to be. And then I hear this baby in the background. I said, oh, by the way, our baby is 6 months old.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
There you go.
Yeah.
But, I've never really known exactly how this works with different people. I just simply know that even when I'm on the phone, there's something that just simply occurs, and I tune into their energy, and then I just tell them the truth as I see it or hear it.
Yeah. I wish science has been studying this for a long time, and a lot of us in this area, and I say a lot, especially through CTPA, we were invited to be laboratory rats by different groups. And I participated in one at St. Mary's University in San Antonio, and it was a fun day. I mean, Colonel Jackson took about 6 of us, and we'll talk about that another time, but there was a purpose for that. It had to do with aura, actually, and seeing color energy. We walked around in a white box kind of thing. Air Force people in uniforms from the Air Force were there. So it was a little different, but we had a great day. We had a lot of fun. But psychologists, therapists of all kinds, doctors of all kinds, neurologists have studied our brains. They're so concentrated on what the brain does, but they don't know how to measure the spirit. They don't know how to study that. And we all know that work in the field, that it's multifunctional. It's not all in the brain. It's not. Now, what happens to the brain or with the brain before we begin a session, I think is very valuable. On the left side, the right side, front, back, middle, wherever. I think that I've been part of that too. And that's okay, but they still can't say how it works. It's one of those, they tell us to believe in a God, and I don't mean to be sarcastic, people, so don't pick on me here, but they ask us to believe in an unseeable being that controlled and created everything. Whether it's a God, I believe it's all the same energy. We happen to call it God here. Other cultures call it something else. And yet they can't believe in this. So if we were created in a certain image, why can't they just let it be and accept it? But if it doesn't happen in a church, there's a real issue with it. It's got to be bad if it doesn't function in a church. I think that's why the Pentecost are so adamant about doing their healings and their psychic work and their speaking of tongues in the church, and they are instructed to never discuss it outside the church. Well, they know how to protect that.
With, the encounters that we have from our star family.
Yes.
That one of the fairs that I did in Corpus, I don't remember it. Do you remember Victoria?
Yes.
Which one? Appleseed.
Yes.
We used to share a room real often, and we were up in the room, and I remember telling her that there were ships going in and out of the bay. And she said, well, let's do a meditation. So we sat down, we did a meditation. As always, I had a legal pad next to me because sometimes I would see things or write things down. I was given a symbol, just still used to this day. The next morning, we went down to the big room where we were going to have the fair. And there was the guy that had the crystals and a lot of jewelry and stuff there. I had just gotten my table set up, and I heard in my head, look up. The ceilings in there were flat. They were not popcorn ceilings. There was no vent anywhere near me. And I looked up, and I saw something come out of the ceiling.
Oh.
And I've got my head craned back, and I'm watching this because it's going in slow motion. Well, the guy over here, the vendor over here, is watching me the whole time. And I watch it as this object comes down very slowly and very gently lands on my table. And then I look up, and this guy's running to my table. He's going, what just happened? And I said, that gift. From where? All I did was point my finger up, and he said, darling, that's the ceiling. And I said, yeah, you got to look up a little bit further. He went and he got his jeweler's loupe, and he said, I'm not going to touch it, but he brought a little clear container that had the little squishy stuff in it that you would put like little tiny gemstones or things in it. And he said, I want you to pick it up. We're going to look through it a loop and see this. And he said, can you please explain to me how a crystal came through the ceiling and landed on your table?
I wish we
Said,
could.
just a gift from friends. And he said, a gift from friends. And I said, yeah, gift from friends. And I put the little lid on it, put it in my pocket, and I still got it. And the symbol that they gave me, I have used it in healing. I had it tattooed underneath a tattoo that I put over it because I just simply needed the energy there as opposed to it being visible. But it's one of the most powerful symbols that I've ever used. And I mean, I looked at it as a blessing because I've had so many encounters since I was a child. To be gifted something like that and have other people see that happen so that there was some validation there was pretty profound.
Reading by the water, that massive amount of water. Seems like every time I did a fair in the Corpus Christi area, it was always like right across the street from the water in one of the downtown hotels. If you wanted to mess with the traffic, you could literally walk to the beach. That's powerful, to be around that much water doing the work that we do. And
exactly.
And right. And the star people and extraterrestrials vehicles are known to go in and out of water on a regular basis around the world. And there have been enough harbors are harder because there's more witnessing. That typically happens further out or in another area around glaciers and such as that. But Corpus has been, in the older days, back in the 40s and 50s, there were many, many, many reports of, especially early morning, between midnight and sunrise, of visions of things popping out of the water. At first, people would think they were seeing the beginning of whales or something like that, and then and it happened so fast, but there were reports. So I'm not surprised. And they know how to make themselves invisible anyway. But what a gift you received. What a gift. What a gift. And used it accordingly. So a gift and a symbol all in the same weekend. Very powerful.
Yes.
We're going to begin to wrap it up, but are you teaching these days?
I haven't done any classes since, well, not any classes with a group of people since early 2000s when I was working at the Pagan Metaphysical store.
Where was that? Which one was that?
It was in San Marcos.
Oh, in San Marcos. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know they ever had one.
Yeah, it was called Goddess Season.
I never knew it was there.
We had jewelry, we had incense, books, clothing, crystals. I made a lot of things that I put in there. Hand painted bags and stuff for tarot or stones. I used to do a lot of handmade soaps and body scrubs, things like that. We had athames, tarot decks, runes. I mean, you name it, we had it in there. But
Never knew it was there.
I would do private sessions there sometimes too. And then I taught several classes in basic energy work and, how to charge their water. I mean, very simple things, easy things that people could pick up. And I enjoyed that.
Are you mentoring one-on-one or small groups?
Not currently.
Okay. Is that something
When
you
I
would do?
moved to New Mexico, I was still doing private readings there. And I was in New Mexico for 5 years. And then I moved to California to do that gallery showing. So I was out there for 5 months. And then I came back to Texas. And when I came back, there wasn't really anybody locally that was doing a lot of fairs. And I was having a hard time trying to connect with anybody from, the old days, from CTPA. I didn't know who to contact. So I didn't do any fairs for a long time. Just in, the private sessions and things like that.
But you are now. You're out there. People can come see you, sit across the table from you. Yeah. And you're a little jewel, so people need to find you. In case you're wondering, public, we are in Central Texas. I'm in country outside of Austin. She's further down the road. Her town is bigger. I don't know where she is in her town. I'm country. Those of you that are familiar with Austin, I mean the Texas area, I'm off of 290 in a town named Elgin. And 290 is a major road, major interstate, I think it's interstate, at least Texas, from Austin to Houston. And a lot of people drive through Elgin and they think that's Elgin. It's not. It's commercial Elgin. Yes, there's an H-E-B grocery store. Manor is ballooning. Oh my God. Pretty soon, we're 19 miles apart, but pretty soon we're going to be butt to butt. Just like Austin is to Round Rock, Georgetown, Pflugerville, you just drive through them. You think you're still in Austin unless you happen to see the count, the sign. But we are headed to grow towards Houston eventually. And pretty soon we're on a toll road, and that's going to make it harder. But pretty soon Manor and Austin are going to, what is now called North Austin, is going to be pretty much a straight way. Same thing down I-35. But where she is a little off the interstate track. So it's a little bit.
Well, we've got the toll road coming right through here, though. Has been for several years.
Bless your heart.
So we have a lot of traffic.
Yep. I've been here going on 4 years now, and they have added 5 lights between in Manor and Elgin and in between in less than 4 years. That's how busy we're getting out here. We already need an overpass. We already need it. Wow. It's ridiculous. But I'm about 15 or 20 minutes away from 290. So I'm really in the country. But you're in a beautiful area. So
I'm less than 5 minutes away from the toll road.
Yeah.
Where it intersects. But it's still got a small town feel.
Yeah,
but it has gotten quite big now.
It's a lot bigger than I remembered it 20 years ago. When I had to go back and forth between San Marcos and Austin, I would take what I call the back way, so I would see where you are, and I would go, wow, those people, they're growing. They're growing. And we've had reason to go into town every now and then, Mike and I have. And the old stores and stuff, I still recognize some of the, the places, but then there are apartment buildings that are huge and big houses, but still it has that small town feel. Yeah.
I mean, Texas Monthly hosted their big barbecue thing here last year, and it's coming again.
Oh, okay.
For our barbecue.
Yeah. What else would you like to tell the public about what you hope for yourself in the future and the community as a whole, our metaphysical community?
I would love to see people be more accepting of their own abilities. I mean, I think it's surprising how so many people don't really realize how gifted they are.
Right.
We all have that ability, and it's just about nurturing it. And it's painful sometimes to see how afraid people are of abilities that we were gifted with. And
I tell people when you have that feeling about somebody, or you maybe even dreamed about them, and you haven't in years, and then you see them in the most unlikely place. Maybe they've been gone from your vicinity for a long time, and you see them in the grocery store, and you say, "I was just thinking about you." That's another
that,
form of psychic ability. Yeah, it's very common.
I mean, my goals for myself are to be more open with who I am. I mean, I started that journey about 5 years ago because I do have some people that will tell me, I don't always remember your name, but I tell people, just look for the lady with the purple hair with the blue streaks. The hair is down to her butt. You won't miss her.
That's an identifier.
It is an identifier. Because my hair is really long and it's purple. With
And
blue
let's,
streaks.
because of her electronic situation in her area, we had to do this on her phone, basically, which meant no picture because of her circumstances. So I'm glad she mentioned that, because now when you go to a fair or you find her some other way, you'll know what to look for. Normally, I don't mind doing Zooms without pictures, and this was one where we just simply couldn't. So normally the pictures are up there, but we will have a picture of her on the scheduling. We'll have some, even if it's just one small picture, we'll have something that people will know what she looks like. So
Yes.
yes. I am just so glad that we have reconnected, and we will not lose this connection. This won't be the last time that Linda will be with us. We're going to try to talk her and continue to talk her into creating that Felix thing gathering, which would be wonderful. And I'm sure there are other subjects that I made a list of other subjects casually mentioned today that I'm going to talk to her about. So we'll be having her back if she will. If she has time.
One thing here, Elaine.
What?
Sometimes we get these messages that may come from an individual that honestly I think come from spirit. And years ago, I was in HEB and I was waiting for my son, who was patiently sitting on the floor looking at all of the comic books that they had available. And a woman walked up behind me and she kind of leaned in and she very quietly whispered to me, "I know who you are, and it's okay." And I remember looking at her, and then she walked away, and then there was nothing there. So I know she was not fully in the store, but that is something that has stayed with me for many, many years, because my son at that time was probably about 7.
I know
But
it's validation.
someone come up and give you that message, it was profound.
And it's hard sometimes to realize whether they really were there or it was just for us to hear and see.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing everything today. I'm just delighted that you're back in the circle. Not that you've ever been gone, but I'm finding myself finding people from doing deep dives in the casual conversations we're having for this podcast, and then finding people that had stepped back in a way. You didn't step back. You just did what you do in a different location, in a different space. And I'm finding that with other people. That's why I was asking you about your fairs, where you were doing your fairs. You're not doing the Austin fairs anymore. And they're big fairs. You're choosing to do a smaller group, and that's great. I certainly understand that. I suspect over the next couple of years, I will be pulling back as well from the big fairs, but not as long as I can go see friends. Even if I'm not participating, I would probably go and get a hug, either a Saturday or Sunday. But I'm so glad that I have your phone number now. I can bug you.
Yes.
I can call you. But
and at some point, I would like to do some of the Austin fairs again. But the last time I checked, there were no openings. So,
but you still have to get. Yeah, you still have to let. Marilyn is the biggest producer in Austin, and of course, Cheryl does her things here too. But you have to call Marilyn and talk to her, and get on the list. That's the best way to do it. And quite frankly, she enjoys having people come back into the fold that are just as much as she does the newbies that have been gone for a while, because it's like saying, "Oh, I found her again." Having familiar faces come back. That's, she appreciates the antiquity of our knowledge and our experience. So, but she also believes in giving everybody an opportunity that are like the newbies that are coming in. So, and she knows that people have to step aside and can't do the work for a while. Now they're finding their way back in. So if you don't have her number, I'll share it with you later. And you can call her, talk to her, send her a text, whatever. Let her know you're interested, and just get on the list. That's all you need to do. You might be surprised at how quickly
you a list of books as well.
I'm sorry, do what?
I will send you a list of books as well.
Oh, please do, because that's great for the public. There's so many people that can't go to fairs. Maybe they don't have any nearby. Maybe they don't have bookstores nearby that they can get to, or maybe they're afraid to be known. But now on Amazon, plus going into the data outfits on the internet, people can educate themselves. So a list of books. Thank you so much. And they will go under your name as being referred by you. If there are movies, if there are YouTube channels, whatever connection like that, please include it. We gladly will print it, include it. All right, sweetie. Thank you, public, for joining with us. Be sure you smile at somebody today. Maybe even get a hug. But be safe. Be good to yourself. Thank you, public. Thank you, Linda. Bye, honey.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into The Conversations with the Ancients, where we take you on a journey where you'll hear voices of metaphysicians from the past, as well as today's spirit mediums, healers, and others who show you a side of the paranormal you've never seen before. Remember to visit our website at conversationswiththeancients.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on Conversations with the Ancients.